Hey, this is Jack Bourne, founder of Deadline Funnel, and I'm here with my friend Selena Soo. I met Selena at an event that she put on in Vegas, and it was a first-class event, and it was just a real treat because she had not only was she sharing some of her knowledge and experience with how to get publicity, but she had top-notch panelists that she got from New York and various corners of the world to all show up and share their experience. And just the whole thing from beginning to end was just really, really top notch. And so it was really cool for me because publicity is a side of business that I know is important, but I've just haven't really put the time and energy into it that I need to. And so 2018 is really a focus for me to try to increase my visibility and work on publicity. And so I'm very excited to be speaking with Selena. So let me give the official introduction. So Selena Soo is a publicity and marketing specialist for visionary entrepreneurs, experts, and authors who want to reach millions with their message. She's helped clients and students get featured in places like the Oprah Magazine, Forbes, Inc., and land interviews on popular podcasts and national TV. Many of Selena's clients have become industry leaders with seven-figure businesses, raving fan bases, and hundreds of thousands of followers. Her approach comes down to building powerful and long-lasting relationships with influencers in the media in a thoughtful, authentic way. Selena, it's great to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah. So what can you share with us? Let's zoom out and talk about why is publicity important for entrepreneurs, even online entrepreneurs?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that, a lot of entrepreneurs think that they don't need publicity in the beginning stages of their business. They think, well, maybe if I have a book, I may need publicity, or if, I have a seven-figure business, I'm going to look into it. But, in the beginning stage of our businesses, it's important that people see us as that go-to expert right from the get-go, because people have a lot of options. And it's one thing to go to a networking event night after night and talk to people about your work, or get on the phone with them and tell them that you're the very best at what you do. But if it's only coming from you, it's not that credible. But if you have influencers, podcasters, magazines, websites where, your ideas are being featured, where the podcast host is saying, this person's amazing, you've got to check out their work, that just adds so much more credibility. And so I just think publicity is important because we need to learn how to, generate buzz in our industry. And also, having that skill of getting other people that have platforms of thousands, hundreds of thousands of millions of people to open up that platform for you, your ideas, your message, your story, your product and service is a really powerful thing. So I think that it's a skill that people should learn early on in their business career.
Yeah, I was talking with Susie Moore recently, and she was one of the speakers at your event. And that's where I met her. And so I made great connections at your event. Again, kudos. And so I know that one of the things that we talked about when I was speaking with her was that when you do this successfully, the way that you teach, you're able to reach a new tribe, a new audience, a new group of people. And she likened it to almost like having an affiliate relationship, because you're getting that warm introduction, all the authority that comes with it, but there's no payment, at least in the form of affiliate commissions.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, there's different ways to build your audience, and they're all worthwhile, right? There's organic, and that's through content and publicity. There's JV partnerships, and then there's, also like paid advertising. But the thing about publicity that's really powerful is it is a form of content marketing, when you put your ideas out there. And the other thing is that if someone is listening to an hour-long podcast interview and then opts into your email list, they're a lot more likely to buy than somebody that just kind of opted in through a Facebook ad or a free gift. Now, of course, I think Facebook ads are important, but I think that you want to think about having a multi-pronged approach to really engaging people and getting them onto your list. So it's a great way to attract, new people. Ramit Sethi, one of my mentors who has a company called I Will Teach to Be Rich and Growth Lab. He built his audience of hundreds and thousands through, content marketing and publicity. Susie Moore, one of our panelists, who's a life coach, she's had her business for about 2 years and has, multiple tens of thousands of people on our email list because of, publicity and writing these articles. So it's definitely something to think about. And, the other cool thing is that publicity is powerful because it also opens up the doors to other opportunities. So if you're looking to do a TED Talk one day or speak on big stages, saying that you've been on podcasts, you've been in magazines, and you've shared your story multiple times is going to help you with that goal. If you want to get a book deal and you can say to the publisher, I've been featured in these places, that could lead to tens of thousands of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars more in your advance. It could lead to corporate or brand partnerships. So there's a lot of reasons why publicity can be valuable beyond the publicity itself. And then, of course, it can help you attract new clients and cultivate clients who are already thinking about you. I've had situations where I'll start doing a bunch of media and I publicize it to my audience. I'll share it on Facebook, I'll put it in my newsletter, and people are like, wow, you're really going places. And, I feel like this is a sign that we're meant to work together because I'm kind of seeing you everywhere. And that's what you want to be like in your business. You want to create, leverage. Deadline funnel is a way that people can create leverage when they use that tool in their business. With publicity, you're reaching thousands or even millions of people versus only just having one-on-one conversations where you're trying to convince people that you're the best at what you do.
So this sounds amazing and incredibly powerful, but as with anything, you have to know what you're doing. So where should someone start if they have never even attempted to do publicity before? Yeah,
I think so. The first thing is starting off with a strategy because it can feel overwhelming. There's so many media outlets out there. There's so many stories you can pitch. How do you even begin? So the first thing is thinking about what kinds of media are going to help me reach my goals. There's a concept that I developed called the publicity pyramid, and it has 4 layers of publicity that you can be thinking about. So the mistake that people make oftentimes is they'll come to me or they'll talk to their friend and say, I want to be interviewed by Oprah on Super Soul Sunday. I want to be on the Today Show. And that's usually not going to be your first stop with publicity. That may be a later stop if that is your path. But what we recommend is, choosing and pursuing opportunities at the base of the publicity pyramid. So at the base are guest posts. So these are, on websites that have audiences, that have traffic that can be redirected back to your site where you're sharing your thought, leadership, and ideas. And there's a lot of websites that are built on the contributor model, places like Forbes, Huffington Post, Mind Body Green, Thrive Global, Business Insider. So these are pretty well-known brand names. So it can boost your brand pretty quickly by being on the site, but you can also share your ideas in an in-depth way, and you can also direct people back to your website. I found that some of my biggest list building opportunities have come through the right guest post opportunities. So I recommend that as a first stop for people. And then the next level would be podcasts. So after you've explained your ideas in depth, you've shared your story, you've written it out, now you're ready to kind of talk about it in depth in a back and forth podcast interview. And the people that tend to listen to 30-minute or hour-long podcasts are people that, care about investing in themselves. They're investing their time, they're investing their resources into listening. These are people that tend to be buyers. And so, if I'm doing a launch for a product that is, or whether it's a coaching program or information product, I myself and, others, I would recommend that, you go on the podcast circuit and speak to those warm audiences of people. So I think online publicity really can move the needle in a really big way for online entrepreneurs and people that have high-end products or services to sell or courses. And then the next level is magazines and TV. With magazines, oftentimes it's going to be a quote. So they're going to share, a little soundbite from you that's going to be included in an article. And then with TV, it's, like a 3-minute typically segment with you. So that's a lot, faster, shorter. So you really want to be ready and prepared for those experiences. And while it will help you reach lots of people, it's not always as in-depth as a podcast interview or a podcast or guest post could be. So I recommend starting at the bottom and then moving towards the top as maybe you're, releasing a book or doing things that are more mass market.
So what would you recommend in terms of an approach? So when you're reaching out to someone who's got a podcast or someone where you want to do a guest blog post, what's a good way to approach?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's use podcasts as an example, because I think that's most relevant to most of your listeners. So, okay, they've identified podcasts as a place where they really want to focus on. They need to make a list of podcasts that would be great for them. So one technique that I recommend is the follow the leader technique. So who are other people in your industry that are doing similar things? Maybe they're a couple of steps ahead of you, or maybe they're your colleagues, and then go into iTunes in the podcast section, type their name, and then all the podcasts that they've appeared on will show show up. So that's a great way to start developing a list. You could also type in something like best business podcast for entrepreneurs. And there's lots of websites like Inc., Entrepreneur, Forbes have compiled lists for you. So if you just do those two things, you'll probably come up with a really good list of podcasts. You can also go onto iTunes and look at the best business podcasts there, or go to New and Noteworthy for that section. So yeah, easily you could find 50 podcasts that could be great for you to be on. Now, one thing to keep in mind is with podcasters, they are influencers. The podcast is a part of their business, and they have spent money to develop the podcast. They've got an audience that they really care about. So building relationships is an important thing here. They're going to want to know that if they're going to bring you onto, their podcast, that you're going to have a lot of value to share with their audience, that, you're on brand. So if you don't have a website or any information about you online yet, that's going to be a bit harder for someone to be like, oh, I would want this person, because it's like their personal endorsement of you. But once you identify which podcasts you want to be on, what I recommend you do is start following those people on social media, on Twitter, engaging with their content. If they are posting their podcast on their website and there's an opportunity to leave comments, leave a comment, write a 5-star review, on iTunes about the podcast. Like, plant those seeds so you're starting to get visible and you're starting to add value before you even ever pitch yourself. And then in terms of the email pitch, there's a couple of steps I recommend people follow. And the first is, of course, there's the subject line. That's kind of like marketing, email marketing 101, like having a subject line that will get their attention. So, think about with a podcast, what would you talk about? And, turn that into like an interesting headline that could even be used for the potential episode you do with a podcast host. And then once you get into the email, the first thing is really to develop a connection, because these podcast hosts tend to be, successful entrepreneurs and influencers in their own right. So saying something about how you really enjoy their podcast, but also adding something specific, because otherwise it can seem like a copy and paste, really general compliment that maybe is not genuine. So even saying like, even if you just started listening to their podcast, I just discovered your podcast 2 weeks ago. I've checked out your last 3 episodes and I thought it was so amazing that I left you a 5-star Amazon review. Like something like that. Even if you just discovered it that week, you could say that if you listen to, the episodes or even parts of the episode. And then you want to briefly introduce yourself by sharing some credibility markers. So why should they pay attention to you? There's a lot of people that are jumping into entrepreneurship nowadays who maybe, there are different levels of business. Some people maybe just started their business yesterday. Other people are more well established. Think about, what are your credibility markers? Could it be that you've been in business for X number of years? Could it mean that you've served a certain number of clients, or that you've developed a certain audience, or that you've gotten a specific result or been in other forms of media? But think about some things that you could share that would really, make you pop. And then what I would do is just share your story ideas, or the topics, that you could talk about in the podcast interview. So just the most interesting, exciting elements of your story, your highs and your lows, actionable takeaways that you could share with the listeners to help them reach a goal. And then you could also mention, if you've been on other podcasts before, because it can be helpful for someone to know, okay, you've got experience with this. Similarly, if you're pitching yourself to guest post somewhere, you may want to include a writing sample or say, I've written at other places, so people know, oh, you have experience in this medium. So those are some of the key elements of a pitch. And if you do that, chances are your pitch is going to catch someone's eye.
So do you have any guidelines on how long is too long for that first email?
Yeah, so it shouldn't be that long. So so in terms of so the first part of the pitch would just be like making that warm connection. That should just be 1 or 2 sentences. And then when you're introducing yourself, that could just be about 2 sentences as well. Below the bottom of your email pitch, you can include a media bio that's a little meatier, and also a link to your website or about page, but you don't want to kind of tell your whole life story. Then you want to transition into your story ideas. So it could be like, I was thinking that I could do, I would love to suggest a podcast interview on the topic of how to develop win-win relationships with influencers, right? So you're kind of like sharing the topic. And then, here are some things I could talk about. And then just including a couple of bullet points, typically 3 to 5 bullet points is really great. And in those bullet points, including, like actionable takeaways, numbers, results, lessons that you could teach, interesting elements of your personal story, and then kind of wrapping it up with, sharing that, you're happy to talk about other topics, or, here are some other interviews I've done before, and letting them know that you're flexible, that you're happy to talk about other things, but just kind of putting everything on a silver platter to help make it easy for the podcaster to make the decision whether it's a yes or a no.
And one of the things that I've noticed, and you seem to be hinting at this or saying it directly, is that whether you're doing a guest post or you're on podcast, if you do a really good job in one or two key places, it can actually bring other people to you, but it certainly makes it easier to get that second, third, fourth engagement. Can you talk a little bit about that and other ways to use your, if you get a publicity win, other ways to leverage publicity?
Yeah, absolutely. So, early on in my business, I had the opportunity to write a guest post for my mentor, Ramit Sethi, and it was called How to Get Your Favorite Expert to Notice You. And it was, it was a guest post for the website, and I was so proud of the piece. And so I wanted to leverage it because I knew that a lot of people, would discover me from Ramit's site, and they did. I had about 1,000 people sign up, for my email list pretty quickly, and it's grown since. In terms of people who've come from, specifically that guest post. But I knew that, I also wanted my audience to know about it. And I knew that they could help me make the article go more viral. And so I shared with people, I told them a story around how I met Ramit, how I got the opportunity, and encouraged them to share on social media and encourage them to leave a comment. And because I did such a good job of really rallying them to do that, I had about 267 comments on that blog post. You really have to make it easy for people to do that. So I guided them. I was just leave a quick sentence about your favorite idea, what you enjoyed, or just any words. And people would respond to me and say, "This was so great, Selena. I loved your guest post with XYZ." And I would just respond back and say, "That is so amazing. I'm so moved that you read the guest post. And would you be actually willing to include what you just said to me, those 2 sentences, on the guest post as a comment?" And so I really directed people to do that. So that's how I got all those comments. And then later when I pitch myself to whether it's other podcasts that are familiar with Ramit's brand or other guest post sites, I say, I have done this guest post with Ramit, and in fact, it got 267 comments. And so that adds a lot of credibility. Now, of course, the article had to be good. Otherwise, people wouldn't want to read it or leave a comment. But I also played an active part in building that social proof and having that opened up doors for the next opportunity and the opportunity after that.
Now, another thing that I know that you teach, because you mentioned this at your Impacting Millions event in Vegas, is using those, as you call them, credibility markers on say your website or your order form, just to really emphasize that, hey, you can trust me. I'm a respected authority.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's some people that are prolific writers and they want to write all the time. Others, they want the media logos because they add credibility and it can open up new doors. Either way, it's valuable to have these media logos. You go to other industry colleagues or competitors, websites, and you see that they're featured on Inc. and Forbes and Entrepreneur. And it is such a valuable thing to have. And, once you get that media hit once, you can include it in your media bio. So I have a client who is a love coach, and she is focused on helping successful, ambitious women, particularly entrepreneurs. And so it's so powerful in her media bio, or in her bio in general, to say, Nicole has been featured in Inc. and Forbes and Business Insider, right? That gets the attention of her ideal clients. It also gets the attention of other media when we're pitching her. If she were to want to pitch herself for a speaking event, that is also going to help open up doors. So something that you invest energy in today, getting these articles, is something that you could use 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the road to help you get more opportunities in your business and really impress your ideal clients.
Now, I know that you've put together some resources. Can you talk, and we'll make the link available wherever this video is, either below or in the description on YouTube, but can you talk a little bit about what those resources are?
Yeah, absolutely. So I created a 3-part video series to help people get publicity, and I really broke it down. So this is sort of a mini course in a way. And so there's 3 videos. The first video is about how to develop your expert topics and get really clear about what you want to present to the media, because you want to make sure that they see you as the go-to expert. So how do you come up with those expert topics? And then when you check out that video, you'll also get a list of 100 media outlets that you can start pitching to, podcasts, magazines, websites, and it's broken down by categories: business, health, personal development. So definitely check that out. The next video after that is about developing your story ideas. And then the last video is your seven-step action plan to getting publicity. And another cool thing that I'm doing is when you opt into that video series, you'll have a chance to win a trip to New York City. You'll just have to fill out a little questionnaire to show me that you have actually watched the videos by answering some multiple choice questions and sharing a little bit about yourself. And so I'm going to be flying one person out to New York City to be mentored by me and to meet some of the influencers and media in my network at a fun influencer dinner party. And Jack, you've been to one of my events, so you know how fun those can be. So I'm excited to extend that opportunity when people opt in to check out the video series.
Yeah, if it's anything like the Vegas event, it will be first class, and there'll be some great connections. And you're in New York City, right?
Yes, I am.
And a lot of the influencers, like Susie lives in New York City, and I know several of the other people who are at your event are from New York City. It seems like obviously that's where there's a lot going on. So a great place to be flying to. So I want to switch gears here real quickly. So you mentioned publicity for a launch, and this was earlier in the conversation. But
yes,
you shared with me that you're making some new additions to your business because, well, why don't you talk about it specifically with regards to Deadline Funnel and how you're using it in your business?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've had my business for 5.5 years, and it's been a launch-based business. And, on the one hand, launches are so fun, but they're also a lot of work. And even you kind of like, in a way, reinvent the wheel every time. Even if you're using the same launch sequence, there's things that need to be updated. You're doing webinars live and things like that. And so I'm looking to create a more sustainable business. And I think this is relevant for anyone who's interested in publicity and is looking to attract more people. There are going to be people on your list who join at, any moment in time, and you want to be able to have something to give them. And so in the past, people would need to wait until I had a launch. But now, we're growing our list through Facebook ads, and we're adding, evergreen products, evergreen webinars. And so we're using Deadline Funnel to create that urgency to get people to buy so that they're feeling like they're in a launch. There is that urgency and incentive, but we're able to kind of automate that and make it happen year round. And so, I talked about, there's different ways to kind of grow your audience. Publicity is one way, but another way is paid media. And the way to really make paid media work is if you have a product on the back end so that you can, monetize all the leads that are coming in or break even on traffic. And so, yeah, we're looking to exponentially grow the business, and there's no way that we couldn't do it without some kind of funnel. But, a key part of the funnel is creating that urgency so it mimics a launch. And so we're using Deadline Funnel for that. And so we've been, testing different price points and different things. And so it's starting to, we're breaking even. And, I think this is going to be a huge part of our business moving forward. So, moving forward, I'm going to have one big launch, and then, ideally, like, everything is going to run in this automated way. So yeah, I don't know a better tool than Deadline Funnel to really help with that piece. So that's been huge for my business.
Thank you for sharing that. The mantra that I've been sharing recently is you should launch when you want to, not because you have to. And that's really the model that you're going to. And so that's great. And the other really good point that you made is that you might get a great publicity opportunity in June, and if your launch is in January, there's going to be a lot of lag time there. And so having that evergreen portion of your marketing catalog is really important.
Definitely. Yeah, that's probably the thing I'm most excited about in my business right now, is growing it in that really systematic way. And I remember initially I did have some resistance towards automating things. I thought, oh, I'm doing a, evergreen funnel. Like, is it less high touch? Does it not seem as genuine? But one thing that I've discovered is to make your evergreen funnel work, you have to put your best foot forward. You have to refine your webinar so that it adds as much value and really incentivizes and leads people into a buying decision. Your emails have to be the best they could be. So I think by, adding that, it's actually forced me to make my marketing and just everything better and better to really serve my people. So it really has been, a really great thing for my business. I didn't realize would be so great. I had like a mental block because I was so used to doing everything live. But then I realized, you can do both. You can launch when you want and also have that evergreen funnel running in the background.
Terrific. Well, as to close this out, I just want to really encourage anyone who's watching this who, like me, wants to focus more on publicity and really tap into markets that and tribes that we currently don't have access to in a way where we're being introduced by a trusted resource, the person who runs the podcast or the website where that guest post is being run. I mean, it's such a great way to reach a new audience and really display your expertise. If you're interested in that, I highly recommend that you jump in and click the link on this page or in the description where the video is and take advantage of Selena's offer. I think this is the third time I've said she put together a really world-class event in Vegas, and it really opened my eyes to where you can take your business with publicity, because I met people whose business is primarily being run off the backs of publicity and just doing nothing but that. And so if you're doing paid media, I think adding in publicity is a great way to improve what you're already doing. You can also borrow the credibility that you get from the publicity and improve the conversion results that you're getting with your paid media. So both sides help each other. So click the link and sign up, because I know that Selena's got some great resources, a lot of great experience. And Selena, I really appreciate the time and thank you for sharing your knowledge.
Thanks so much, Jack.